Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we're checking out Monored Goblins, which got a lot of new cards out of Foundations, including some reprints as well. At 1 mana we've got Fanatical Firebrand back in standard. At 2 mana there's the Seer Slicer Goblin, making a 1/1 Goblin token end of turn if we enabled a raid. And then at 3 mana there's a new Dropkick Bomber, another Goblin Lord, and for a red mana we can also give our creature flying, and then if it deals combat damage we have to sacrifice it, so another useful ability for an aggro deck. And we also have Krenko back in standard. Don't expect to activate it a whole lot in today's metagame, but it's definitely a nice card for the grindier matchups where there's maybe kind of a board stall happening. Then Krenko can quickly take over by pumping out more and more Goblin tokens. Don't have a way to give it haste, so that's part of why I don't expect to use it a whole lot. But then taking a look at the rest of the deck, another very important one of course is the Horde Master, giving other goblins +1/+1, and whenever the Horde Master or another goblin we control dies, we get to exile the top card of our library. If it's a goblin creature card, we get to cast it until the end of our next turn, so that's a great source of card advantage in a deck that's mostly goblins. And then at 1 mana, we're also playing the Reckless Lackey as a 1/2 goblin with First Strike and Haste. It's also a pirate, so it will also synergize with our Breach's Eager Pillager to make additional treasure tokens, maybe prevent something from blocking, or exile the top card that we get to play this turn. And then Breach is pretty decent as a 3/3 First Strike as well. And then, of course, our Fanatical Firebrand, another pirate, so we've got 8 1-mana pirates. And then occasionally the Lackey can also be sacrificed to draw and make a treasure token, can also be a way of maybe triggering the Horde Master if we're looking for something specific. And then Cacophony Scamp also benefits from all the lords, increasing its power, so it can deal more damage if we decide to sacrifice it. And then at 3 mana we also have Squee, which can also make a 1/1 tapped and attacking goblin token if we get in there, and can also get it back out of the graveyard. And then rounding out the deck, a few removal spells. Burst Lightning can also be kicked to deal 4 as opposed to 2 damage, can also go face, which is good for an aggro deck. And then Witchstalker Frenzy is just going after opposing creatures, but in a deck with a lot of smaller creatures it's pretty easy to cast this on the cheap, so it can be a great tempo play. And then the mana base also has access to Soulstone Sanctuary, turning into a 3/3 creature with Vigilance that has all creature types, including a goblin, and then Cavern of Souls to make our goblins uncounterable against control. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw with a fine hand. A Lackey, another pirate for Breaches. Opponent on mono white. And a Sky Knight Squire, good target for the Firebrand. And I'll just do it now in case our opponent can make tokens at instant speed. So our opponent might be on the cats. Burst Lightning also a good answer for our Rabo, should they play it here. Opponent keeps up 3 mana. Alright, in that case, Squee versus Breaches. If our opponent has removal, maybe give them Squee, since Breaches could be more useful later. Still a slight possibility that they're more of a tokens deck, and they could set up some blockers at instant speed as well. A flanker, fair enough. At least doesn't block anything for free. So it does look like a cat deck. Don't have the best answer to a Roaming Throne if that shows up. And yeah, there it is. So Breaches cannot pay the ward to prevent it from blocking. So yeah, might just be Breaches, Lackey, pass a turn. And then next turn we can maybe find a solution. Also tempted to just keep a Burst Lightning in case our opponent plays more cats with various synergies, so we can at least respond. But yeah, if Lackey attacks, I can only choose one mode, so I cannot go for both treasure and prevent it from blocking to pay for the ward. Regal Caracal, yeah, that's very good with the roaming thrown out. So, yeah, this is where we need a Krenko to keep up with the opponent's cat production. One turn of roaming thrown was just too much. Now we can take out the Caracal, but damage has been done. Do we want to try and attack with breaches? They could just block with pretty much everyone except Caracal. Then we get to finish off roaming thrown. So that's a small victory. If they just block with all the cat tokens, I can kick Burst Lightning, finish off Caracal, and then eat the cat tokens for free. So this might still be a reasonable attack. And then I gotta play the land first, since I'm probably exiling the top card here. Hordemaster isn't bad. Although I'm probably kicking a Burst Lightning this turn. They could also just take 3, to be honest. And they're gonna block with everyone. So now I have to decide, do we finish off Caracal, eat a bunch of tokens for free, or do we go for Roaming Throne, pay the ward, and then I can still play Hordemaster? I think I'm more scared of Roaming Throne than Caracal. So, gotta try this. And then we've got a 2-3 first strike on defense that can maybe hold off the 2-2s. Hunter will draw, but only one card this time. And we find another Hordemaster, so that's not bad. Can play it and Lackey. And then sacking a Lackey will also exile 2 cards to maybe find more Goblins. So we established a pretty nice engine. Still gonna pass and wait to see what else our opponent plays. Since double first strike on defense can also hold off a 4-4. No attacks. Yeah, I think we go digging. Found 2 goblins, and drew another one. Okay, can also think about Squee, but I think this is potentially even a turn where we could attack with a Lackey, but that also opens up an attack on the way back, which is probably not worth it. Just trying to think if we can enable a raid here for the Seer Slicer, but then the problem is our opponent can block with all their life linkers, and then they gain a ton of life. But we can maybe get away with it, because it would also trigger Hordemaster a bunch. And then if they block with a 4-4, we can finish it off with a Firebrand. But yeah, I expect them to just block with all the 2-2s to gain as much life as possible. Do we have a preference between Helpful Hunter or a token? I guess the tokens have inherent lifelink, so those are better. But yeah, this matchup is not as much about their life total as it is dominating the board, which probably involves finding a Krenko at some point. And I'm just gonna empty my hand here. Can still sack the Lackey, but for now, still happy to keep it around. So we are making progress. Our opponent's plan has kind of stalled out. But there's a Rabo, so that's a scary one. Pumps the team. Although they still don't have the best attack. I'll take my turn. And a Burst Lightning, alright, that can answer the Caracal at instant speed. So it might be time for the Scamps to get busy. Do we send in Squee? I probably want Kicked Burst Lightning at the ready. Opponent's gonna take it, still gonna sack a Scamp to finish off our Rabo. And trigger double Horde Master. So yeah, the Horde Masters are putting in a ton of work. Finding more goblins. I guess it is tempting to finish off the Caracal as well. And find even more goblins, you love to see it. Alright, so unless our opponent's packing board wipes, I think we've taken over. And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome, what a game. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Hand seems fine. Plenty of goblins to synergize with the Horde Master. Opponent's blue-white. Keeps on top. Yeah, I'll get in with a Lackey, since I'm likely to play Horde Master on 2. So then we'll just get more damage in overall. Maze Mind Tome, so definitely looks like the controlling variety with board wipes in our future. So I'm not going to show them Cavern yet, in case they keep up a counterspell next turn. Our opponent's Cries. If their Sweeper's a Day of Judgment, we at least trigger the Horde Master. If it's Sunfall, they just exile everything. So not the matchup for Krenko, that's for sure. Alright, name Goblin. Better than naming Pirate here. But we do have a Pirate in play to enable breaches. Another reason to start with a Lackey on turn 1. And go to attackers. And then making a treasure is the only logical play. I'll hang on to the Scamp in case they have a Day of Judgment for next turn. But yeah, with 2 Burst Lightnings, we still have a long way to go if we want to try and burn them out. Opponent's got a Beza, so that will make tokens, gain life. Sure. Pretty good way to stabilize. So we might have to go to Krenko and hope they don't have a board wipe to follow that up. For now we can still attack, prevent Beza from blocking, and make another treasure. Or maybe exile the top card. I mean, this is the perfect setup for a Sunfall. But if we don't play Krenko, it feels like we don't have enough late game to eventually get there. Even though we could also sack the Lackey to get something out of it. So we don't have to overextend into a Sunfall. I just don't see us dealing 18 plus damage. Tome will gain 4 eventually as well. So I'll attack. Beza cannot block, and make a treasure. It's going to be telling if our opponent double jumps right away. They do. So that makes a Sweeper even more likely. Otherwise they might have just jumped 4-4 here. So I'm debating whether or not to play Krenko. Yeah, I mean, I could just pass and then sack Lackey in response to a Sweeper. Don't even think we play Scamp. exercise breaches, so that's gone. Also would have been an answer to Krenko, to be fair. And then, do we have any play? Can activate the Sanctuary, although it doesn't really attack particularly well. Can double Burst Lightning to finish off Beza, but that's bad in the face of a counterspell. So, yeah, not what we were necessarily expecting. If I sack the Lackey, we do trigger the Horde Master as well. So maybe that's still fine. Find another Scamp. And another Burst Lightning. So that's potentially 12 points of burn. Find another Horde Master. So, is it time for Krenko? Maybe is. That one's uncounterable. And then gotta play the Scamp since we cannot take it with us. They do have Demolition Field if they want to blow up Cavern or Sanctuary. And that's what they're going for. So at least no mana for Sunfall this turn. Could still see a Day of Judgment. Or just spot removal for Krenko. And get lost. That happens. Beza attacks. Alright, that's fine. Can set up a decent attack on the way back. Although still need to be mindful of Sunfalls in the future. So, one Horde Master we can probably deploy, attack, and then have a Seer Slicer to follow up with. Could also go exploring onto the Scamp. Another Seer Slicer doesn't seem like what I need. And another one. So I didn't hit a land, which is kind of what I was looking for. But at least now the Scam doesn't die to an Elspeth Smite. So I guess we're just attacking and playing the Seer Slicer now. Maybe hang on to the Horde Masters. They did have a Smite, as it turns out, so that will get exiled. Sure. Pass a turn. Opponents go to Jace. Shrinking down the Scamp can prevent it from dealing damage on the way out.
You can be made to obey.
Beza is going to protect Jace. Alright, the Bomber can give our Goblins flying. Although, what if we go double Horde Master? Then we should be able to set up a decent attack on Jace, plus Burst Lightning can finish off Beza. Although then we're seriously overextended into a Sunfall. What about a single Horde Master? That would technically still be enough. If they block Seer Slicer, I can finish off Beza. I have 3 going at Jace. So then I would have to double Burst Lightning. Alright, I guess this is kind of the point where we decide to go for it. Although could switch it up and play 1 Bomber. Opponent counters. So that's out of the way. So it feels like if they did have Sunfall, they wouldn't have countered here. So then, what's our plan now? Bomber. Do we fly something? Yeah, I guess we'll try this. And go after Jace. And then I guess they're tempted to block this camp, so it only deals 1 damage, but then we get to finish off Jace. So they're probably blocking the Seer Slicer. But then I'll still be able to deal 3, 4, 5 to Jace. So not quite enough to finish it off, but at least they won't be able to draw with it. Close call. But yeah, I guess now it makes more sense to just finish off Beza.
How foolish.
Alright. And Jace draws, milling another Krenko.
Upon your ideas.
And gets rid of Demolition Field. They still have another to answer the Sanctuary. Okay, so gotta commit some resources to finishing off Jace. But I think we're committing now.
Retreat is the sensible action.
And it's probably time to sack this camp. Put our opponent to 3, and then double Burst Lightning might be able to end the game. I'll save Lanky for next turn. Okay, so we got lucky to dodge a Sunfall. And I think we maneuvered our way into a good position. Now with an untapped land I can actually double Burst Lightning. But no need to go for it, we'll let our opponent tap out first. Ritual to draw. Sure. If they find the Sunfall and cast it, they're dead. And our opponent explodes, they couldn't even find the answer. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand's a little underwhelming. We're missing some of our Goblin synergies and payoffs. But we do have a good start with some removal. So I'll still try it out. And then hope our top decks are kind to us. Heartfire Hero, I want to remove. I think we use Firebrand. Even though we'll have fewer Goblin synergies going forward. We might be more of a control deck in this matchup. Especially with this opening hand. Opponent plotting a Slick Shot, still maybe dies to a Burst Lightning. But if they have a Pump Spell, that may not work out, so it's going to be tricky to time it correctly. Opponent plots another Slick Shot instead. And the Ruckus. Well, can't keep a Burst Lightning forever. So I guess it's time for Squee. And we could just be dead next turn. But at least we've got a bit of pressure now and can easily cast a 1-mana Frenzy. So double Slick Shots, cast a Ruckus, 2 cards left. Royal Treatment, so do they also have a Fling effect to close out the game? Looks like it. Alright, that's too bad, but yeah, it would have been very difficult to remove their creatures with a Royal Treatment. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a keepable hand. Opponent's red-black. And I'll start with a Lanky, I think. Even if they play like a Deep Cavern Bat, we have a pair of Seer Slicers, so we can still enable those. It's going to be a Hex Mage, so opponent on a red-black sacrifice deck. And another one, so they'll have a 3-2 left over. So yeah, that does hold off our attack. Could use Firebrands to kind of finish it off, but that's not particularly mana efficient. So it might just be Sear Slicer past the turn, and then next turn we can set up the Firebrand play. Although by then they might have sacrificed the Curse token as well. And Nowhere to Run takes out Sear Slicer. That's fine. One fewer answer to Krenko. And I kind of like just taking out the Hex Mage right now before they can use the Cursed roll for something beneficial. And then now we'll have Raid enabled. The Lackey still missing red mana to activate. So we'll see. Fear of Lost Teeth can deal 1 on the way out. And another Hex Mage. Alright, Hordemaster would likely die to the Fear of Lost Teeth trigger now. So interesting spot. If I attack with a Lackey, I guess I just block with a Hex Mage. Can attack with a Sear Slicer, and then it basically trades alongside a token for a Fear of Lost Teeth. But that might be fine, because we have another Goblin plus Lackey we can play. And then wait on the Hordemaster to have that survive. Opponent takes a trade. And the game continues. Can double block Hexmage if they were to attack with our first strikers. Although instant speed removal could be scary now. Especially if we set up an attack with a Hordemaster, counting on the +1/+1 bonus. But this is all leading up towards Krenko eventually taking over. Stash Skeleton doesn't block, and a Burst Lightning the draw, which I cannot cast. So we'll play Hordemaster, and then doesn't seem like our opponent's holding any instant speed removal, so these can all attack. Enable Raid. At some point we'll draw Mountain, but the more removal they use on the Hordemaster, the less answers they'll have to Krenko. Opponent's got a Bargain. And then now, time for Krenko, I imagine. Not really worth it to set up any attacks. Opponent is holding priority, so they might have more instants they can play. Another Bargain, that's too bad. Krenko down. Do we trade a Sear Slicer for a Hex Mage? I think we do, just because the next turn we can Burst Lightning Hex Mage, and then we can start attacking with the rest of the team. Alright, never mind. Nightmare makes me discard. The case will be solved. So yeah, things could be going better for us. Now we get to stick to our original plan. And get in for 4. Not sure what kind of cards our opponent is looking for with the case. If we draw land, we can activate Sanctuary at the very least. We can also start sacrificing the lackeys. Opponent did keep both on top. Nowhere to Run answers 1 lackey. Not a disaster. They can still sack the case if they'd like. Which will shuffle away the other card. So they've got a good one in hand. We're not going to waste any time, get in for 6. And hope they don't have any board wipes. Disturbing Mirth for a redraw. And a Fear of Lost Teeth is a decent chump blocker. Opponent passes, another Sanctuary to draw. So I'll just start by attacking. If they have nothing, they're technically dead. So, first rank damage happens, Fear can finish off a 1-1, opponent still takes 4. Could still decide to sacrifice the Lackey, maybe if they remove the Sanctuary here. So we're guaranteed 2 damage, put the opponent to 1. Another bargain. So they do get to Manifest Dread, but they kind of waited maybe too long, so now they don't get to block with a 2-2. So, yeah, interesting spot. So I could sacrifice the Lackey, put our opponent to 1. And then with another Sanctuary, if our opponent misses, I guess they still have a Restless Vents as well. Or I can let damage happen. Fear of Lost Teeth finishes off a 1-1. We still have Lackey and a token and another Sanctuary. The difference between 1 and 2 life isn't big when Burst Lightning deals 2 damage. So, yeah, I think we're fine to let that happen. I guess the opponent also gains 1 life here, so didn't take that into account. Which maybe was a reason to sack the Lackey, so we can actually top deck Burst Lightning, although with 5 mana we can just kick a Burst Lightning as well. So do I sack the Lackey here? I think we just animate Sanctuary. And then now with another Lackey, they can no longer make the play of double blocking Sanctuary, because it would still take 3. So we'll go for it. If they animate Vents and have more instant speed removal, that could be bad. So block Lackey, chump Sanctuary, and we can sank this on the way out. Finding Breaches. Their opponent's at 1. And we finally got there. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a functional hand. A Lackey setting up a Seer Slicer. Although opponent may have the answer, Duress takes our Burst Lightning. Could have been worse. And a Nowhere to Run's gonna take out our 2-1. Alright, so we're pretty much empty-handed here. Another Seer Slicer was a good draw. Could use one of our lords to pump the team to deal a little bit more damage here. Opponent seems to have another removal spell locked onto the Goblin. But yeah, it's just going to be another Firebrand attack. Maybe should have played land first just to have the Lackey's ability available. Any reason to keep a Firebrand untapped? Can't think of any. Just another removal spell for Seer Slicer. But yeah, it already generated some tokens for us. 1-for-1ing in the face of all these 1-drops is not the way to go. But we'll see. Doesn't take much to stabilize. Archfiend is certainly a good starting point. So it might be time to sack the Lackey, since I don't think we'll get there with what we have in play. and not the draws we were hoping for. So yeah, just gotta play a scamp. Maybe keep land in hand in case they're tempted to use another discard spell. Archfiend does put our opponent on a clock as well, but Bloodletter doubles the damage, so that's now a very fast clock. So we're at 8. Krenko sadly showed up a turn too late here, otherwise we might have been able to see it in action. If our opponent's cool, maybe they won't attack. But yeah, the Archfiend can just attack to close out the game now. Alright, GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a functional hand. Got a 1, 2, 3 curve. Facing black-white. Yeah, I'll still play a Lackey in 1. Says this Bats deck, looks like it. So thanks to the Hornmaster we can attack past it. And then Krenko is looking good if we can get to it eventually. Not a matchup where we expect any board wipes, although of course spot removal could still take care of it. It's gonna be a Channeler that can quickly start growing, so it could prove to be a problem, and a Rune Lurker. It's already up to a 4-3. Alright, Breaches lets us attack past it, since we already have a Pirate in play. Still could have been reasonable to double spell Hordemaster with a 1-drop. But now Breaches making a treasure next turn could set up Krenko. Alright, opponent's gonna have a look. Although eventually the Scamp could also take care of a Deep Cavern Bat. And Krenko does get exiled. Breaches still blocks the Channeler. And then they can move those counters onto a life-linking flyer, perhaps. And then how do we plan to take care of those? It's not going to be easy, but the Channeler is just going to keep getting more and more counters. If their last card is cut down for Hordemaster, this is a disaster. But it didn't seem like it. Alright, so Deep Cavern Bat's a 4-4. Not going to be easy to outrace. Although maybe a Kick Burst Lightning can still take care of it eventually. For now, Hordemaster, Lackey, and then Breaches gets all 3 modes here, since we'll have 3 pirates attacking. So don't want to play my land yet in case we exile one. And yeah, did exile a lane, so we get to play it. Ooh, and Duo into another Channeler. Not what we wanted to see. And then they get to add 2 more counters to the Channeler. Just 1 attacking. So Breaches is keeping us in the game, but for how long? So yeah, I could maybe consider sacking a Lackey just to trigger double Hordemaster and find more goblins that could come in handy. The Goblin giving our creatures flying could also be useful, for instance. Finding another Anthem effect to pump Scamp means it can take out the Deep Cavern Bats. So there's a lot of options here. I think I try my luck with top card and attack with the Scamp as well. And just another mountain. So we could let first strike damage happen and then sack the lackey, so we know if we want to maybe sack the Scamp to deal 3 to the bat. Opponent is jumping a fair bit, so that's fine. Can let damage happen. And then, yeah, this dies. I can deal 3 to their face, potentially. So I'm not really incentivized to sack the lackey, but then again we're also likely to find more goblins we can cast with double Horde Master triggering. So I'll still do this before deciding what to do with a Scamp. Slicer and a Firebrand. Alright, perfect. I guess the Scamp doesn't get to deal 3 to Deep Cavern Bat now. And we still have to watch out for the creature land as well. But I may as well go all out now. There's no pain lands to give the Channeler flying, so that's also important. Get to make a pair of goblins. There may be some top decks that can still win them the game. I don't think Channeler is one of them. So now I could just jump, finish off the other Channeler. And then we should have plenty on the way back. Finding more goblins in the process. And there's our Burst Lightning, so at long last we can answer Deep Cavern Bat, but our opponent's super dead. So we got to see our Monored Goblins in action, and yeah, the deck certainly exceeded my expectations. Got to see the power of the Horde Master, providing a lot of card advantage. Sadly, I did not get to activate Krenko, but that's to be expected in a Goblin deck that doesn't have a way to give it haste, so we'll maybe have to wait for future expansions to give us one of those. And then in the current standard meta, there's a lot of aggro decks, making it difficult for Krenko to have the time to activate, and then once it does activate, we might be up against a deck with board wipes. So yeah, not the best time for Krenko to shine in the current standard, but the rest of the Goblin deck still seemed pretty decent. So that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.